Imagine reality not as something you live in, but as something that lives in you. A sea of infinite possibilities, quiet, waiting, unformed until the moment you look at it. Nikola Tesla once said, "My brain is only a receiver." In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. He understood something most scientists still hesitate to admit, that the act of observation connects the observer and the observed. Consciousness is not a passenger, but a participant. A century later, Dr. Joe Dispenza says, "Where you place your attention is where you place your energy." Different language, same truth. Because what you observe, you energize. What you energize, you materialize. What you ignore dissolves back into potential. We've all heard that everything is energy. That statement is incomplete. Energy without awareness is chaos, random potential with no direction. It's conscious observation that gives energy its form. Quantum physicists discovered this in the famous double-slit experiment. Light behaves as both wave and particle, infinite potential and defined form, but the moment it is observed, the wave collapses into one specific result. The act of looking changes the outcome. Nikola Tesla knew this intuitively long before the term observer effect existed. He said, "The gift of mental power comes from God, the divine being, and if we concentrate our minds on that truth, we become in tune with this great power." He was telling us that focus, conscious attention, is not passive, it's creative. It tunes you into the frequency of what you observe. And that's where Joe Dispenza bridges the gap. He teaches that your attention is your energy, and the field mirrors whatever signal you send. So when you constantly focus on lack, you feed the energy of lack. When you observe fear, you amplify it. But when you focus on gratitude, love, or abundance, you collapse those states into reality. Nikola Tesla was obsessed with patterns of energy and visible forces moving through space. He once described himself as a sensitive instrument to the very influences of the cosmos. He felt vibrations. He sensed shifts. He studied the unseen until it became visible. He was, quite literally, an observer of the invisible world. Joe Dispenza teaches us how to do the same thing internally. He says that every thought sends an electrical signal into the field. Every emotion adds magnetism to that signal. Together, they form your unique energetic signature, your personal frequency. And the field doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your state of observation. Imagine walking into a room where someone is angry but pretending to smile. You feel the tension before they speak. That's the energy of their observation, what they're being, not what they're doing. Now think of yourself. When you wake up and immediately scroll through bad news, you're observing fear, conflict, scarcity, and feeding that part of the field. But if you begin your morning observing what's already working, feeling gratitude for even one small thing, you've redirected the lens of creation itself. This is the observer effect at work, not just in laboratories, but in life. Your world doesn't show you what's real. It shows you what you observe most. Nikola Tesla once warned, "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence." He wasn't dismissing science. He was pointing to consciousness, the missing variable. Because observation in its purest form isn't seeing with the eyes. It's awareness meeting energy. Joe Dispenza calls it becoming the observer, stepping out of the autopilot self and watching your own thoughts, emotions, and reactions. When you become aware of your patterns, you stop unconsciously energizing them. That's the first collapse of an old wave, the first transformation. He explains it like this. Your body has been trained to be the unconscious mind. You think you're choosing, but you're repeating memorized emotions, anger, stress, worry. And each time you replay those emotions, you are observing the past, energizing the same reality again and again. The only way out is to observe differently. Nikola Tesla watched patterns in light, magnetism, and frequency. Joe teaches us to watch patterns in thought and emotion. Different tools, same science. In the quantum model, everything exists in potential. But observation collapses that potential into form. The moment you focus on something, anything, you start collapsing possibility into experience. And this isn't metaphor. Brain scans show that focused attention changes neural architecture. Cells fire together, wire together, and a new mind begins to form. Nikola Tesla said, "My methods are different. I do not rush into actual work. When I get an idea, I start at once building it up in my imagination." He observed his inventions into being, holding them in mind until the unseen became seen. Joe calls this mental rehearsal. The practice of tuning into a new reality through focus and elevated emotion until the brain believes it's already happening. Its observation is creation. But there's a deeper level. Nikola Tesla believed his ideas came from outside himself, from the core of the universe. Said, "My brain is only a receiver." That means he understood that inspiration doesn't come from effort. It comes from tuning in. And you can only tune in when your mind is still enough to observe without interference. Joe teaches this as the meditative observer, the moment when you no longer identify as the body, the environment, or time. When you become pure awareness, detached from the story, the signal becomes clear. You're no longer observing through filters of fear or expectation. You're observing as consciousness itself. And that's when miracles, or what Nikola Tesla would have called natural laws, begin to reveal themselves. So ask yourself, what are you observing most? Your problems, or your possibilities, your past, or your potential? Because every time you observe the same old story, you power the same old outcome. Every time you replay the same emotion, you broadcast the same frequency into the field. Nikola Tesla tuned his instruments with precision. Joe asks us to tune our attention with intention. Both lead to alignment with the field, that space of infinite potential that bends to focus. The key is not to observe unconsciously. Don't just look at what's in front of you. Observe what you want to see, not from wishful thinking, but from knowing that your attention is the chisel shaping the marble of reality. Joe says, the moment you start feeling the emotion of your future, you're observing a new destiny into being. That's not poetry, that's physics. Because emotion adds magnetism to focus, it stabilizes the waveform. So when you see yourself healthy and feel gratitude now, you are observing health into matter. When you see yourself abundant and feel joy now, you are observing prosperity into existence. The field doesn't question it. It simply mirrors the observer. Nikola Tesla lived this truth every day. He would walk alone through the streets of New York at night, lost in thought, eyes lifted toward the stars. He said that in those moments of solitude, the noise of the world would fade, and ideas would pour in as light, clear, complete, alive. That was his form of meditation. Observation without effort, connection without words. Joe calls that same state the unified field, a place where the observer and the observed merge, where there is no separation, no striving, only resonance. It's what mystics called God, and scientists now call coherence. When you reach that level of awareness, you don't create through force, you create through presence. You don't chase results, you notice them, because the field is already complete. He's the observer who decides which version of it becomes real. Every second you are observing something, a thought, a memory, a possibility. Every second that observation is sending energy into the field. So your life right now is not a result of what's out there, it's the accumulated echo of what you've been observing within. Nikola Tesla was right. The brain is a receiver. Joe Dispenza is right. Attention is energy. And both were pointing to the same sacred secret that reality itself bends to awareness. You don't have to force the universe. You only have to see it clearly, not with your eyes, but with your consciousness. Because in the end, the greatest experiment of all isn't happening in a lab. It's happening inside you. Every moment you observe, you create. Every moment you focus, you collapse possibility into form. Every moment you awaken, the universe rearranges itself to meet your gaze. So observe wisely. Look with clarity, and remember it's not the world that decides what's real. It's you. It's the observer.